Welcome, everybody. This is Philip Geyer, CEO and virtual CISO of PivoLogic. Thank you so much for joining. We apologize for the delay to get kicked off. We have a large amount of guests on, and we're so happy and blessed to have them aboard. Also want to, we're joined by my good friend, Ryan Cloutier, president of Secure Studio. Hi, Ryan. How you doing?
Doing really good, Philly. Glad to be here today and do this with you. I'm excited to teach some folks some things.
There you go. Let's talk about security. So welcome everybody to the PivoLogic and Secure Studio webinar entitled Security Risk Score, Putting Risk into Context. We're happy you could join today. It's going to be a rich content and conversation-packed day. So be ready and hang on to your chair, couch, or phone, or whatever you're joining with today. It's going to be a great day. Next, I'd like to kind of just quickly run through the agenda and a little bit of housekeeping. So we're going to do an introduction of myself and PivoLogic. Ryan will introduce himself as well. And really, we're going to talk about why we're here. And you probably have a good idea why, with the increase in security and the need to prepare within the organizations as well. We're also going to have a kind of a fireside chat with a couple of information veterans, Ryan and I, chatting about putting risk into context when it comes to your security risk score. Then we're going to open it up in the last 15 minutes of the webinar and answer questions. You can put them in the chat if you like, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And the ones that we can't get to, we'll answer and we'll filter back out an email if you want to get those. Also, we are going to offer a technical security risk demo. If you want to get a deep dive on how everything works from a technical perspective, we're more than happy to do that. You can send a request to info@pivologic.com. And the last slide, we're going to talk about what that looks like too, and what you're going to get from that technical security risk demo. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. We had talked about the questions, so save those for the last 15 minutes. And also we talked about if you want to contact PivoLogic, if you have any questions throughout this, we're going to go pretty deep in some topics. So if it's something around security controls or about admin controls or anything that's more technical, just shoot us an email at info@pivologic.com and we can set some time up to have a more technical conversation with you. Next, we're going to just introduce ourselves. So like I said, I'm Philip Geyer. I'm the CEO and virtual CISO for PivoLogic. I'm kind of an old guy. I've been in technology for about 31 years now, and I've worked with some of the leading technology and innovative companies in the world. My job at PivoLogic is to work with IT leaders, and I work a lot of executives as well to help architect and implement security strategies that are sustainable. So sometimes you put these put a plan together and it just sits on the shelf. So that can't happen with today's security risks that we're seeing. So we want to have a sustainable results to improve our security posture to protect your people, data, and business. With that, I'm going to talk a little bit about, one thing I did notice here, I wanted to say too, that Ryan, he obviously has a little bit more hair than I do. So I think that's maybe Ryan from all the stress. So I kind of did you one up here, Ryan. I had a little hair to my picture.
I love it.
How is that, huh? That's pretty good. That's kind of like your hair kind of growing out.
I like it.
So really quickly, I'm going to talk about PivoLogic. So PivoLogic is the leader in cybersecurity. We've been around since 2015. We're headquartered in just outside of Minneapolis, 20 miles outside, in a small little suburb called Maple Grove, Minnesota. And we help organizations make security simple. We know that's a very complex world and we do this through our comprehensive risk assessments and provide a security roadmap of how to increase your security posture over time. And the real big thing is really to understand where to best invest your security dollars to have the greatest impact to your business. Because a lot of people are investing in tools, a lot of people are investing in different types of solutions, but it doesn't really make the mark and be the best investment for your business overall to get the results you're looking for. So what we did is we developed the PivoLogic platform. and integrated with the leading technology and security partners like Secure Studio. And we provide a cybersecurity lifecycle model, and we want it to be easy to deploy and effective at helping you improve your security posture, no matter what size your company is. Because security is kind of not one size fits all. If you're a financial institution, you have much more regulatory compliance and other things that you have to worry about. But a small to medium business might not have that, or a mom and pop shop on the corner, a video store or liquor store may not need that type of security posture. So we're able to right size your company with the right security solutions. And this provides a continuous improvement model and is supported by our expert security teams and security consultants. And really what this does is allows you to focus on what you do best, which is run and grow your company. We also take a family approach. We're a family business. I have 3 of my sons that work for me, Justin, Jeff, and Jake. It's just a blessing to have them on board. And we believe in mission before profit. And we are servant leaders to our customers and our community. We work with Feed My Starving Children. We do a golf tournament every year. We do a faith radio and work with Bowl 3 Coffee as well. So that's a quick little kind of overview of myself and PivotLogic. I'm going to turn over to Ryan to give a quick overview of himself and Secure Studio. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, Philly. Ryan Cloutier. I am the president of Security Studio. You can think of me as a security Sherpa. Really what I enjoy doing in my day-to-day job and day-to-day life is working with folks like Philly and yourselves to navigate this complex world of information security more simply. And we're going to go a lot deeper into that as we go throughout the conversation today. What Security Studio is, who we are, and what we do. We provide risk assessment platforms to organizations like PivotLogic. We do this to ensure that they have the best resources available to serve you. We are a little bit different. Think of us maybe a bit counterculture. What you see on the screen here, we really believe in. So we are a values-based organization. We are mission-driven and vision-focused. We too believe in putting the mission before money. And really, we're here to serve and to provide the best security solutions and advisement that we can to businesses of all sizes. And Philly touched on this earlier, mom and pop shop all the way up to the enterprise. So very excited to be here today to talk to you guys about this because this topic is really, really important. I also host a couple of podcasts. I won't mention the names here, but if you go to Google, you can find them. And we're actually going to be launching a new podcast soon. So follow Security Studio on LinkedIn and Twitter to get more information on that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. And one thing that really kind of drove me to Security Studio is those values, their mission, their vision really lined up to PivotLogic. I think it's really important that we share that with our customers because you want to deal with people that have good values. They're on a mission to help, and they can be servant leaders, and they can help you and guide you down the path to really have a better security posture that can really help your organization. So we really just come alongside you and want to help. So that's what I love about Ryan in general and Security Studio as well. So I want to talk next about why we're here. So for a few reasons. One is because the security landscape is rapidly changing. We're going to talk about that in some great detail. Don't need to go in too much detail. We just got to look at the dark side, the Ragnar Locker, the R Evil. Boy, those guys are really attacking, and they're sending some pretty bad stuff into our pipelines, into our supply chains, into our networks, into our companies, really trying to take us down. So they're really attacking our most valuable assets. And we need to better understand our security risk score, which is our security posture. We're going to get into that too. What does security risk score mean? And put it into context with our business. We're going to talk about that as well. Also, our security leaders are not feeling confident in being prepared to combat the increase in cyber attacks. Ryan and I meet with, I would say, Ryan, 30 organizations a month. And from the top down, I'd say CEOs are worried about being in the news. Technology leaders are about trying to secure the networks, the endpoints, and the SaaS apps that they have out there, the cloud. they're kind of working on that. So that's something that they're really concerned about.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. It's growing concerns. Insurance, am I insurable? Am I defensible? So it's definitely something that we're seeing increase, and thankfully, a lot of leaders now are waking up to the fact that we do have to do something about this.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Kind of we used to talk about Ryan was I think it was just basic security controls, right? Or no, are now just kind of a table of scraps. Now we need to do a better job on really having a better security strategy and implementing our programs. If you look at this slide on the left here, 59% of organizations have been breached at least once in the past year. That's according to Forrester. That is basically kind of the roll of the dice. Are you going to get hacked or not? But Ryan, I do believe that you need to take the stance that you are going to have a breach, right? You need to be prepared, and it's how you detect and recover from that breach that's going to really make a difference for your company. So for any security IT risk leader that feels very, very uncomfortable about this, I think in the recent months, we continue to highlight the prevalence of high-profile vulnerabilities. We had talked about that, right? SolarWinds, Kaseya, and the zero-day vulnerability targeting Microsoft Exchange just about a month ago. And research shows that it was taking organizations an additional 40 days to patch critical vulnerabilities. Kind of, if you guys are from Minnesota, you remember the Target fiasco where they saw the vulnerability come through. Everybody kind of ignored it. There was a patch and they got in. So they're sitting out there longer. Now they're 40 days to patch critical vulnerabilities. Second, they're concerned and aware of the potential impact of attacks, intrusion, and breaches. Accenture Ponyman has estimated that the average cost of a data breach in the U.S. was $8.6 million. See a lot of numbers around there, around 8.6 million, 2 million, 4 million. But the fact is that it's a significant amount of cost when you have a data breach. It's easier to pay for a solution today than pay $2 million to try to mitigate that risk when something happens. And the same survey found that the mean time to detect stretched to 206 days. That is over 6 months that sits in your system. It is only common sense to appreciate that the longer an attack goes undetected, the bigger the potential impact. And unfortunately, Ryan and I have both had many experiences with customers getting attacked, and it is really nasty. And it can have an impact up to 2 to 3 years on your business if it gets out in the news, and it can really cost your business lots of money and really disrupt your company. So the cyber risk is a factor of the impact of an event on the left times the likelihood of an event actually equals cyber risk. So now it is not that organizations are not trying to manage cyber risk. They're implementing many different technologies that we talked about and spending money on tools and other solutions, while they're not getting the results that they need or want. So we're going to dive into a little bit here on kind of talking about what is putting risk into context, and we're going to fly into our Philly G and Ryan Mann fireside chat, putting risk into context. Just a reminder here, if you want to get your technical security risk demo, you can send a request to info@pivologic.com, or you can put it in the chat. We'll monitor that as well if you want to get that set up to get your technical security risk demo.
So I think, putting risk into context is really an important part of risk management. As we looked at those previous stats, it's getting more expensive. I take the approach that you need to assume breach. So we refer to that as the assume breach mentality, right? The bad guys are already in. They've probably already stolen my data. What can I do? And the answer is there's lots you can do, and it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. Where most organizations, in my experience, have struggled to effectively manage risk is that they skip over putting it into context for the business. I'll give you a good example. Earlier this week, I have a couple of young college students that I'm mentoring, and we had an incident where they found a critical vulnerability. And so they were very excited. Hey, this is a 10 on the CVSS. It's critical. We've got to do something. We've got to do something right now. And I walked them through and coached them through, well, hold on, let's put this into context. What machine is that vulnerability on? What business function does that machine serve? What would happen if that machine went down or got ransomed, or what's the actual risk to the business? And what we found was that particular machine did nothing more than keep a lunch menu displayed in the lunchroom. So very low risk. So while the vulnerability was critical, the risk itself was very low. And that's an exercise that everyone should be going through as we think about where to invest our limited time and our limited financial resources. There is no such thing as risk elimination. You can't get rid of all risk. There's no such thing as 100% secure. There is no such thing as unhackable. At the end of the day, every system can be compromised. Every business will be impacted by a cyber event, either directly or indirectly. We are seeing a growing trend of supply chain interruptions as a result. So that would be an indirect way that your business could be impacted by one of your vendors' poor security practices. So being able to talk about this in context of the business and the business needs is very important. It also helps you plan more effectively for what you need to do right away. It helps you to plan where to spend your next information security dollar. Risk, I like to think of risk like underwear. It's very personal, and your choice is your choice. And so businesses have to look at risk not from an information security perspective, but from a business perspective. And information security practitioners need to work more closely with the business to implement the risk decisions the business makes. All too often, I've seen information security people say, well, you have to do this and you have to do that, and we've got to lock everything down. And what we find is, even if we do that, if it's causing the business to be interrupted, if it's inconvenient to the users, they'll just find a way to work around it. So as we go through the rest of this talk today, it's important to think about these things in the term of context. Could you live without that machine for a day or two? What would the consequence be? The last piece I'll say about this is always remember that if the risk impacts human life, that is always the most important thing. So if we have a risk to say an IV infusion pump or something like that, maybe we're a healthcare provider, that has the potential to affect human life. And so that risk should always be prioritized above all others. But as we go through this and think about risk, it really helps us to put that risk into context. A vulnerability without an exploit is not a risk.
That's great, Ryan. Thank you so much.
So before we move on, I just want to lighten things up a little bit. So I'm going to give you guys a bad dad joke.
Uh-oh, warning.
What do you call a group of math and science geeks at a party? Social engineers. Ba-dum-bum.
Oh, here we go. The first of many people. Beware, we warned you. Warning, warning, warning. Lost in space. Some of you may know that, but may not know that. That's interesting, Ryan, business perspective. So I was meeting with a CEO yesterday, and their business perspective was different than IT. And it was different than the staff, different than the employees, and different than the regulators as well for compliance. But so I guess the business perspective, putting that into context of the position within the company would be interesting too, because it's all about optics and narrative when IT is trying to present that to leadership, to regulatory compliance or employees. It's really good to kind of run through those. And you don't need a really expensive solution to kind of build that optics or narrative. You could take a simple spreadsheet, take your applications and your systems, and then create risk profile matrix, and really just rank them of importance. right? If this application got compromised, is it a 5? Is it a 1? And if it is, you could even have what's the optic, or what do I need to send to the CEO, to the regulatory compliance people, right? And that'd be a way for you to kind of get your arms around that critical thinking when it comes to putting risk into context.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that IT professionals can do to help the business understand some of this is, we've entered an era now where good security is actually a business differentiator. You can actually make more money as a business if you're doing security right. So I think it's important for us to start to have those conversations as well. This isn't just about being a cost center. This isn't just about protecting ourselves from cyber criminals. Leaders want to know how this is going to help them. Rule number one about being a business is businesses make money. So how are we going to help the business make more money by doing better security? That helps us to frame risk into context. I've had a lot of success in my career with getting budgets approved when I'm able to show how that then can be leveraged by the business to improve customer experience, to improve product and service offerings, and to be able to say to the customer, hey, we're doing better than our competitors to keep your data safe.
That's a really good point. I think one thing when we go in these engagements, that we are really the culture changers. We're really helping IT and executive management, board of directors really change the organization on how they view cybersecurity risk throughout the whole organization. That's so important. If you're not doing that as an IT leader, you really need to figure out how to change the culture, get security top of mind. I just saw an article the other day that security is the number one concern for CEOs. Of 60% of CEOs, the number one concern is cybersecurity.
It absolutely is. And what's interesting is when I talk to CEOs and CISOs, they generally have a different understanding of why it matters. So what is the driver for the CEO to say that, security is a concern for them? A lot of times will differ from what the technical teams will say. So, one of the things that Security Studio and Pivotal Logic have done to partner together is come up with a common language for describing risk and a common method to measure that risk. And that's really important because if we're not on the same page, we aren't able to make progress. And all too many times throughout my career, I have been in rooms with, multiple folks, and everybody has a different understanding of what information security is. And everyone has a different understanding of what risks actually matter to the business. So having that common language, getting onto the same page, that then helps us frame this in context. It also helps us with our narratives. So if and when we do have, or rather I should say, when you do have your security event, if you've been effectively managing risk up to that point, you're going to have a much different story to tell than if you've done nothing, or if you've done it kind of chaotically or ad hoc. Those are the companies that tend to make the news. The companies that have been effectively managing risk are the ones that, don't have to pay the ransom. They had backups, they had a good plan, and they generally avoid being, the featured news story of the day.
That's really good, Ryan. I think really, we come along, customers, to really help you understand this whole concept around putting risk into context, how to craft that narrative, how to put the business case together. And that's a big part of our engagements. I mean, we're in there with you. We're in the trenches with your IT team. We're in the trenches with your employees, with the executive management, and we're helping you get that narrative down, the optics down, so you can be better prepared to identify, communicate, plan, and report risk, improve your security posture over time. And to me, that's probably the most exciting part of my job as a virtual CISO. I get to help people figure all this out and put them in a better security posture. And security is fun. When people kind of laugh, what do you mean security is fun? It's not fun. What is fun because sometimes when you have a problem and you put a plan together and you see it work, it's an amazing thing to see. And when you see your score, we're talking about our score, our security risk score, go from a 400 to a 750 or 800, it's fun. So with that, what we did is we put together 4 areas that you can focus on to get the best results. And how do you align that with putting risk into context? So the 4 are identify, communicate, plan, and report. And here's the first one. We're gonna go here. Any more bad dad jokes, Ryan? Are you good to go?
I have another one. How did the vegetable farmer sell his produce on the dark web? He used onion routing. But I'm done.
We're pretty good. All right. So the next topic, identifying risk. So I look at identifying risk as like when you go to for a checkup at the doctor, right? So you go into the doctor, and the first thing you do is they weigh you, they check your blood pressure. And I have a weight coat syndrome, so my blood pressure is always high at the doctor. He said, "Well, you got to go on the medicine." I said, "No, I just don't like seeing doctors." So they check your blood pressure, and then what they really do to do the kind of a deeper dive, they do the blood test. They want to know what your iron is. They want to know what your counts are. And they really want to do a deep dive of what's going on, with you. They'll do the weight, they'll do the blood pressure, they'll do the blood test, they'll do the visual. And what do? They basically start asking a bunch of questions and interview you and have a conversation around what's your lifestyle, what's your diet, how do you feel, what's hurting. It's the same thing for identifying your risk. It's kind of, we call it, Ryan, the care plan or the security plan.
Yeah, and it's important to, identify the risk. You cannot protect what you cannot see. And a lot of organizations don't have a good picture of what their risk profile is. What are the elements in their business that are at risk? Are there procedures that are missing? Are there, processes? Believe it or not, it's almost never technology that's missing. It's the human side of it. It's the process side, the policy side, how the business interacts with IT. These are the things that we find, really have the greatest impact. And that all begins with identifying what your risks currently are.
Yeah, and having that kind of a third party risk analysis helps because you see your environment as kind of how you see it, and you have a bias towards, like, if I ask you how's your security posture, you're going to say, well, it's good, but is it really? So we would come in and really understand kind of the foundational areas we're going to speak to briefly on helping you identify that risk and creating that risk profile or that care plan to be able to improve your security health over time.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Ryan.
Communication, right?
Yep.
So, this is why using a standard language and a standard score matters. When you're trying to communicate risk to a stakeholder, C-level, they don't need nor want all the technical details, right? That's not what they're interested in. So if you come in and say, "Oh, we got all these vulnerabilities," or the ransomware, the this, that, that's not what they want to hear. They want to know, where are we? Where should we be? How long is it going to take us to get there? And how much is that going to cost? And so by being able to effectively communicate that risk in the context of business. So I will never tell a business leader, "Oh, this computer is at risk." I will tell the business leader, this part of the business is at risk if something happens to this technology. Are you comfortable with that risk? Yes or no? And almost always the answer is no, because now they understand it isn't an IT thing to them any longer. It isn't a computer problem or a cybersecurity problem. It's now a business issue. So being able to effectively and cleanly communicate risk at the appropriate levels, The other thing that's really nice about the approach Pivotal Logic takes to helping you navigate this is that, we still need those details, right? So the C-level, they want to see things kind of at that high level view, maybe some, primary colors, couple numbers. But the tech folks, they need the actual details. They need to know the specific machine, the specific vulnerability. So the nice thing with the Pivotal Logic platform is that you get that whole view. So you're able to communicate risk effectively across the business from the top all the way down to the technical doers.
That's really good, Ryan. And like I said before, we communicate risk through what we call a security risk score, much like your credit score, 850 being good, 350 not so good. But if you start paying credit cards off, start paying on time, your credit score goes up, much like your security risk score goes up as you kind of get through and take care of things that have been identified on your risk profile. So that's really good. So the next one is once we've identified the risk and we can effectively communicate the risk, right? We want to be able to put a plan in place. So I look at this as kind of like taking a trip to our cabin requires a plan. I mean, who is going? The best part I like, what are we going to eat? What's the food plan? What's the sleeping arrangements? What do we need for beverages? So we put a plan together to take a trip. We also, before we go, we check the gas tank, we check the tires, make sure the vehicle is working, but we have a plan, right? And that plan gets us to where we're going, right? And allows us to have a good trip to the cabin. So Ryan, can you talk a little bit about kind of the security comprehensive plan that it would take for most organizations to improve their security risk score?
Yeah, so when we're thinking about how we're going to plan for the risks that we've discovered, we really want to look at the holistic picture of risk. So we want to look at those administrative controls, the people, the process, procedures, policy, these things. We want to look at the physical controls, right? Are we doing enough to keep the machine safe? Interesting thing came up the other day. I said, physical controls, we need to do that. They said, well, we're in the cloud. We don't have any physical devices. I said, how do you get to the cloud? Oh, yeah. Right. So we need to look at that physical side of things. We need to look at our internal technical and our external technical controls, firewalls, antivirus, anti-malware. Have we done enough to block ports on the firewall? Are we doing traffic inspection and detection? All these nuanced details. Well, after you do that, most organizations are going to wind up with literal hundreds upon hundreds of risks that they've discovered. But that can be overwhelming without a plan. So what the plan allows you to do and why planning is so important, there's no way to address all of those risks in one shot. In most cases, most organizations, if they've never done a risk assessment before, are looking at between 2 to 4 years of work. So having a plan that's structured, that focuses on the most unacceptable risk to the business first, allows you to more clearly and cleanly navigate through that plan, allows you to budget better, allows you to allocate and plan for resource time better. And the best part is, if you have a plan and you're making progress, you are 100% defensible. So if something does happen, you find yourself, unfortunately, the victim of cybercrime because you were still working the plan, you most likely will not be found to be negligent in any way because you're able to produce a plan and show progress against that plan. Insurance companies are starting to ask for a lot more from us for renewals. One of the things that's going to help you have that conversation with your insurance company and make sure that you're getting the best rates possible is being able to provide them your plan for addressing your current risk. So the plan really does help you, not just from a technical perspective of, what do I do and where do I go do it? Not just from a communication leadership perspective of here's where we were, here's where we are, and here's where we're going, but also to communicate to any customer that might ask about, how you're addressing risks. Insurance folks, regulators can help you out with compliance and audits as well. So it's really important to have a good plan. Now, a good plan doesn't necessarily have to be complicated. And that's one of the other benefits to the Pivotal Logic and Security Studio partnership is, we provide you a simplified plan that's very easy to understand and to navigate. But you absolutely have to have some kind of plan somewhere. And please don't do like some folks have, and they say, Ryan, we have a plan. I say, what is it? They say, cry, pray, call you. That's not a valid plan.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. And we talk about foundational too, like making sure that your security controls are mapped to your administrative, physical, internal, technical, and external technical vulnerabilities around either a NIST cybersecurity framework, ISO 27001. That's when we talk about comprehensive security. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in some of our technical security risk demo. So if you want to get a demo, just send a request to info@pivotlogic.com, and we can dive down really deep, guys, really deep, technical, whatever you want. So put a request in the chat or send us an email at info@pivotlogic to schedule that technical security risk demo for Ryan and myself. The last one we're going to talk about is reporting risk outward and upward. So this is probably one of my favorite, that kind of much like a report card, and hopefully your report card weren't all D's. But I remember I came from school and I had I came home and I said, my dad, I got an A. He said, that's fantastic. Good job. What were the rest of the grades? I said, C's and D's. He goes, well, okay, well, I guess that's okay, but you need to work on getting those C's and D's up. So much like a progress report or even a family letter instructing what's going on, what's up with your information security, what's our vulnerability, and more importantly, what is our cybersecurity risk score? I'm telling you, that in itself allows you to talk and communicate the optics to your team, to your employees, to management, to IT board, the regulators, the auditors, and more importantly, the cybersecurity insurance providers as well. Just recently, I talked with a customer, and they do about 50 of these security profiles for vendors that they hook up to in their bank. They support banks. So he said it's just unbelievable. So working with him to try to improve their security posture and be able to report that up to these financial institutions around their security score. That's being followed by NIST CSF framework, which really covers off on most of the security controls that they're looking for. So anything else on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think, that being able to report risk, I fully believe by this time next year will become a mandatory minimum. Yeah. That the expectation of your customers, your vendors, regulators, governments, they're going to want to know that you've got some kind of plan, and they're going to want to see you be able to report out on that plan. So having, reporting that is easy to consume, that is adjustable for various levels and audiences is very important. The reporting that we provide through the Pivotal Logic security assessment is designed to fit all audiences by having different reports for those audiences. The worst thing you can do is hand over the 800-page detailed technical report to a business leader, right? That's not what they want to see. They want the 2-page report. So it's something that's important and needed, and fully believe, given the way we're seeing things legislatively move and some of the actions we've seen come out of the White House and the government, that this will become a mandatory minimum very soon. So being prepared for that keeps you ahead of the curve. And what's the old adage? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
And we talk about just seeing the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot more attacks and see more regulation. So let's get better prepared and put a plan in place. So if we look at this, an overview of putting risk into context, we're able to identify your security risk, communicate your risk, put a plan in place to address your risk, and report your risk upward and outward. So hopefully that helps on putting risk into context. The next thing we have is we're going to open it up for questions. So if you want to put some questions in the chat, I'm going to go back into here and see what questions we have here. We're going to take about 15 minutes for this. We're going to take about 10 minutes, and we're going to come back. We're going to close it out with the technical security risk demo. let's take
While we wait on those questions, I do have another terrible dad joke.
Oh, there you go.
Why did the band never get a gig?
Why did the band never get a gig?
Because it was called 1023 megabyte.
Okay. Oh, we had to rate Ryan's dad jokes, scale 1 to 10. Now they're rating your jokes.
Oh, nice.
You did pretty good. You got a solid 5, a 7.
So I see a question here from John. Great question. So John's question is, do we have any thoughts on how to change the culture of an organization and how that organization views cybersecurity risk? Absolutely. What you want to do is start with taking somebody out to lunch. So find the highest stakeholder that's willing to go to lunch with you and have a conversation. What you really want to talk about isn't information security, believe it or not. Shift the conversation to how are they protecting themselves and their family from cybercrime? If a business leader is unable to answer how they protect themselves and their family from cybercrime, they're generally unable to answer how they protect their business from it as well. What I have found is when you make this personal and applicable to them, that's when you start to get awareness. That's when you start to get their buy-in. That's when they start to think differently about this. A good example here is for most people, computers are magic. They really are. They don't know how they work. They don't know how complex they are. A lot of people run around with an iPhone, not realizing they have one of the most complex pieces of technology ever created in their hand, right? That's not their experience. They have a simplified experience. So when it comes to changing culture, we as security professionals and IT professionals, we actually have to adjust and adapt to the individual that we're talking to, because at the end of the day, and I know this might sound harsh, they actually don't care that much about technology. They don't care that much about security. What they care about is not being in the news, not getting sued, not losing money. And so that's one way to approach it. But if you make it personal and really get into their, what do you do? Do you have an Alexa at home? Is mom, or dad getting any, mail order medication? Do they have smart medicine bottles? Find something in their personal life that's relevant to their dinner table and then talk to that. And they generally will start to then ask you more questions. Mike wants to know if we can talk about more about how to find your risk score. Mike, yep, we will absolutely do that. That's going to be at the end of the Q&A here. We're going to walk you through and talk you through what you can do to start getting visibility into what your risk score is.
And that's going to be resolved basically of our assessment and looking at those foundational areas of administrative, physical, internal, and external, and really getting that score. And it's a really interesting. Maybe Ryan can talk about a little bit about how you weight the different areas and how that score is kind of formulated. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So the way that we approach weighting is a combination of best practice paired with over 70 years of hardcore day-to-day security experience. So when we rank a risk, it's because if we rank it high, it's because we've seen businesses be disrupted by that. We've seen that risk show up and actually become the cause of a ransomware event or business interruption. Back to something I said earlier, there is no such thing as risk elimination. And therefore, some risks are going to exist. What we need to do is understand how impactful is this risk. So we've done some of that legwork for you by taking this deep experience that we have and pairing it with the weighting so that you're able to trust that when we rank a particular risk as a high risk, that it truly is high. And it's not high simply because of its vulnerability score or because a particular framework calls it high. It's high because it's been paired with real world events. And we know that that is something that would negatively impact the business. I figured out I do have a question that I get asked quite a lot, and that's about third party risk. And what do we need to be doing there? And the short answer is you need to risk assess every vendor that you have. Before the pandemic, I used to say that your toilet paper vendor was your lowest risk vendor. And boy, was I proven wrong. Having said that, though, it is really important to understand because all of us today rely on one or many third-party providers and vendors in order for us to conduct our business. And we just saw last week, Microsoft had a pretty significant data breach. The cloud is a place, but it's not any more secure than your on-prem. Actually, in a lot of cases, it's less secure. So really understanding what your business risk is in relationship to your vendors is super important. And I'll give you a quick stat. 89% of the data breaches that occurred last year, data breaches or ransom events that occurred last year, were the direct result of a third party having bad security practices. So the phish came in because their Exchange server got hijacked, or there was a shared network connection between the vendor and the customer that was compromised. So definitely want to look at your vendor's risk in addition to your own.
Yeah, great. Hopefully I got the right slide up now. We got
looks great.
demo, something you want to offer to the people on the call. This technical security risk demo, you can send a request to info@pivotlogic.com. And what we're going to do is Ryan and I are going to get on the phone with you. We'll allow you to ask questions about your security to the experts. And we're going to show you how we calculate and communicate security risk score for your organization. You can see a couple of charts down there below about the current assessment, how they're weighted, what are the various sections there, admin, internal, external, and physical controls. And then also you view samples of risk reports and comprehensive roadmap, the action plan, the full report, the executive summary report, and management summary reports. We'll show you those. And then also you receive a free risk profile for your business. So I'll run you through a quick risk profile. We'll provide that back to you, which will give you kind of an understanding of how you rank on your security risk. And then that'll allow you to best approach to defend your organization against information security risk. So that wraps it up for today. We hope that everybody's had a educational time. Like I said, there's a lot of detail that we can go into from a technical perspective, or just get to know your business. And every security is different for every different type of customer. So we look forward to jumping in a call with you. Send a request to info@pivotlogic.com. Any final thoughts, Ryan?
I'll leave you with this. Do something.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you do in the next week, just do something. Identify one new asset on the network that you don't have a document on yet. Run a vulnerability scan. Call us up, send us an email, get your security risk demo scheduled. Do something next week to improve your security and reduce your risk.
Great advice, Ryan. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. You guys have a blessed day, and we'll talk to you soon.